Hey, hello everyone, and welcome to this premiere of the Lead Different podcast. Mindy, how are you today?
I'm awesome. It's so good to be here. Happy
Thanks so much.
Friday.
Happy Friday to you. I love all the people that you invited. Let's see who shows up and interacts with us on the podcast today. I've got Mindy who knows how to get through just about anything. What I re-listened to our interview this morning, Mindy,
Mm,
before coming on, and there was a couple of really cool things we talked about. One was what a difference this has made for you in terms of being able to filter uh, who you want to work with. And so, we'll talk about that during the podcast. So those of you that are listening live, feel free to put stuff in the chat. We're live on YouTube, on Facebook, and on LinkedIn. So if you put a comment on any of those platforms, we'll see them here. The other thing, Mindy, that you can do is open up LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube on one of your other devices, and then we'll try to keep up with all the comments. But we're here for you. The other thing that I really enjoyed, Mindy, is your origin story. I love asking the question about where do you think your contribute came from, or your better way, or your make sense, whatever your why is. And you told a great story. So those of you that are listening, buckle up for that one. It's a really cool story about what it's been like to be Mindy from the time she was 5 years old, and what drives her to want to make a difference today. Mindy, what's on your mind as we broadcast this episode brand new?
I'm excited to re-listen again back to the clips. I think whenever I hear, like, you had posted a brief snippet, exactly like how to filter for no, and I was like, oh wow, I had forgotten that, and that really resonated with me as I rewatched that last night, and how powerful that is. Because often when you're starting out, you feel like you have to say yes to everything, and and it actually could become your biggest barrier.
Yeah, and as we talked about, and you'll hear about it in an interview. A lot of our audience is coaches and fellow Y coaches. One of the challenges we have as contributors is what everything we say yes to, right?
Mhm.
And it's hard to say no, right? And so, but one of the things that I love that you shared is when you do find someone that's not a fit for you, you still want to help them. So you connect them with one of
Yeah,
your colleagues who can
that's
help
right.
them. And I love that because it gives us the opportunity to help others without it having to be us, right?
Yeah. And I think that comes really from the place of abundance and that abundance mindset. And I just seen so much in conversations recently about even just taking a step back and really reflecting on, am I in abundance mindset, or is this emotion or react how I am behaving coming from a mindset of scarcity? I think, and that can shift. You can be
Yes.
used to being in abundance and all of a sudden something can trigger and you move into a different spot. And if you don't take a step back to reflect on that, uh, then you could be really behaving in a way that's not natural to you. And so it is good to kind of always keep that in mind as well.
Yeah. And, I love that you brought up abundance because abundance is something, it's almost a prerequisite if you want to work with me. If I'm going to work with you, if we're going to be partners, if we're going to be, even if we're just collaborating on something, I want to work with people who believe in abundance, who believe in making the pie bigger.
Yeah.
I want to make the pie big enough so that everybody can get a slice. I don't believe it's a limited pie. And it's not a win-lose. It's a win-win. And I call it win-win-win. It's a win for me. It's a win for you. And it's a win for your clients. And let's
Mm,
make it a win for everybody. And if we can do that, I think it all comes back. I had a great conversation with a fellow coach yesterday that was doing an activation session, and she's a speaker coach. And one of the things she said, Dan, here's the other thing you can't ever forget when you're speaking, the fifth element. And the fifth element is love. And
mm,
you've got to be pouring your love into that
mm.
audience. The speaker, and Krista Martin, my coach, always talks about that. And she says, as I'm sitting here preparing this deck for this presentation, I'm pouring my love into it. And it sounds so good. Renee Smith, who's part of the People Forward Network, talks about love at work, right? And we forget that that's an important part of just about everything we do. And we feel that when it's there. And I definitely felt that in your interview, Mindy. There's so much of what you said, your why not moment. And I think I'm trying to remember. professionally, I think you're one of the first people I've met that got married in college. So, if we're looking at me, I've been married 30 years. She'd been married 26 years. So she probably got married freshman year, because I'm looking at somebody who looks very young, and I'm like, years married. Gosh, you did get married in college. My wife and I got married, I think, 2 years after we graduated. But that was a cool why not moment that you shared with us. So what do you say we share the podcast episode with everyone?
Yeah.
All of you that are on LinkedIn, on Facebook, or on YouTube that are listening in, like I said, as soon as we start the podcast, Mindy and I are going to be in the background. We're going to be able to see your comments, and she and I will be texting back and forth, and we'll get your questions answered. This is a new thing that I'm doing. So if you guys don't mind, I'm going to give Mindy a little bit of a preview. So what we'll do is we'll go off camera. Nobody will be able to hear us. We'll mute our microphones just in case. But you and I will really just be in the background looking for comments. And if anybody joins and has questions or comments, we'll respond to them until the interview ends. When the interview ends, we'll go off the air. And then you guys, please follow the Lead Different podcast on YouTube. Follow us on Podbean. That's where you can find us on Apple Podcasts and everything else. We are just starting out. So everyone you share with, if you know someone who needs to know how to lead different, if you know a fan of Mindy Honcoop, make sure you tell them about it and tell them about this episode so that we can get more followers and we can help more leaders lead different. So you ready to go backstage, Mindy?
I'm excited. Yeah, let's do this.
All right, let's do this.
Welcome to Lead Different, the podcast that redefines leadership and challenges the status quo. Hosted by Daniel Dominguez, founder and CEO of Why Not Leadership. This show is your compass to becoming a better leader through the power of self-awareness. Good leaders foster teams that are engaged, empowered, and energized. Join us on this transformative journey as we equip you with the tools and insights to lead different. Get ready to challenge the ordinary and embrace self-aware leadership. This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different, because great leaders change the world.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lead Different podcast. Today, we have Mindy Honcoop as our guest. She is a tenured people leader and HR advisor who is passionate about writing, speaking, and advising HR technology companies. With over 20 years of experience in the field, Mindy has guided leaders in optimizing their workplaces and has also become a respected author, speaker, and trusted advisor in the industry. As the founder of Agile and HR LLC, Mindy brings her expertise to help organizations develop agile and human-centered workplaces. Her extensive knowledge and experience have led her to hold leadership roles at companies such as Care.com, Spiceworks, Ziff Davis, Expedia, and she also served as the Chief People Officer at TCP Software. Beyond her professional achievements, Mindy is actively involved in nonprofit work, serving on the board of Love Justice International. She is also a co-founder of the Austin Women in Agile Meetup. She has taken the lead in launching Disrupt HR Austin 3.0, showcasing her commitment to fostering collaboration and innovation in the HR community. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to Mindy Honcoop. How are you, Mindy?
Dan, it's such a pleasure to be here. I've always enjoyed our conversations. I'm excited we actually get to record one.
Yes. Well, you know what? It was very easy. When we were introduced and we had our first conversation, it's real easy for me to see that this would be a conversation that our audience would benefit from, and especially with the type of work that you do. And then we're going to get into your why operating system and how you operate. But it's really great to have you here. You've done so much, Mindy. What is the, in 20 years of working in this role, what has been the biggest change that you've noticed in the industry?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think the biggest that I have seen is our ability in a very distributed way of work coming out of the pandemic is really having to rethink how we work for the first time. Often we had these structures in place and we just you didn't see a lot of change. And the pandemic made us really rethink. Now, some organizations created Band-Aids. I was listening to someone earlier talk about this, and I loved how they mentioned they just put a Band-Aid. They were just waiting for the moment they could get back into the office. They didn't really rethink how they worked to make remote work, right? They didn't really take the time to say why and how. And those organizations that really were thoughtful really kind of took a step back and really thought, how can we thrive in this? How can we actually use this as an opportunity to think about the possibilities, not just to get by? And those really rethought their structures and rebuilt their structures. Their people, process, and systems look very different now, a very much more human-centered, which is really exciting.
Well, you mentioned something I definitely want to unpack: people, process, and systems. And I love that it starts with people.
Yeah.
So a lot of companies, as you said, kind of gave the remote work and the let's optimize the way we work process a little bit of I want to say, I think the word is lip service, right? They paid it lip service and said, yeah, we're going to
Yeah.
allow that to happen. But as soon as they could, they started calling people back into the office. And our
Right.
workforce has changed. There is a lot of things that have changed. We have a new generation in the workforce that prioritizes family, prioritizes
Mhm.
different things, and they want quality of life before they want the big title, the promotion,
Yeah.
right? So I'm sure that's a change you've been able to see over the past 20 years. How is it that you're leading the way to help companies do this differently?
Yeah, how I like come in with I come from a social work background, first of all, and also with training in human-centered design and agile approaches, being able to really take that step back and think about the holistic ecosystem, really being able to think, how are we as humans, and we're messy as humans. You put a bunch of us together without really a thoughtful foundation or structure, and things get complicated really fast. And so for me, it's about really being able to come in and help organizations understand, first of all, what is our why? Why do we exist? And how are we working together or not? And really being able to understand that current state and really being able to articulate, where do we need to head? Where are we heading? And then how do we really operationalize that North Star, that strategic focus from the organizational capability formula of people, process, and systems?
So those are key in like almost everything you talk about: the people, the process, and the systems.
The
So
foundation.
it is foundational, right? And it starts with people. And I love that you said what we all know: people are messy. People,
Mm,
but without, you can have all the best processes and all the best systems, but if you don't have the right people, or your
mhm.
people aren't engaged, empowered, and energized,
Yeah.
they're not going to get the mission done the way you can. You're not going to get the most out of them if you're not maximizing their strengths. So one of the things that I love to talk about, Mindy, and we've had the opportunity to review
Mm,
your why operating system, is I definitely see this in you. So your why is
mm,
contribute, your how is better way, and your what is trust. So what we know about Mindy is she, in everything she does, she wants to make a difference, make a positive impact. How she does that is by finding better ways and then sharing them with others. And then ultimately, what you can count on her is that she is going to build relationships that are based on trust. One of the questions I love to ask is, how did it feel to you when we reviewed your results and we started looking at the Y operating system of Mindy?
Dan, I've taken so many assessments, first of all. And when you came back with the results of the why assessment, I felt seen. I felt like finally there is a really crisp and concise way to really articulate my values and the value, my internal value, but also the value I bring in the work that I do.
And I love, thank you so much for that. And we will take that endorsement. But what's really cool, and I hear this all the time, Mindy, when I do this with leaders, that I think you probably knew this about yourself, because one of the questions
Mm,
I like to ask is, can you see your YOS and how it's played out in your life? And you talked about community building,
yeah.
social work, making a difference, and then always looking for how you can make something better. It's just something that you're
Mm,
continuously in pursuit of. And so it's not like we gave you something new, but what I hear from leaders is, now you have a language with which to say
yes.
it. Would you
Yes.
agree with that?
Yes, exactly. Because I think before I was trying to articulate it, and ever since the conversation with that assessment, now I get to it within an elevator pitch. An elevator pitch has been so hard for me. Like, how do I talk about? Because I'm like a Swiss Army knife, Dan. And how do I talk about all the things that I'm passionate about and excited about, and how I work with people, and how I'm able just in a few moments be able to create a deep connection and a meaningful connection with someone, and then understand even within a short amount of time, by being curious, by actively listening, just by caring and being empathetic, what are some really viable next steps that we're going to be able to take together? Yes, because before we had our conversation and I understood the why and the how and the trust, I'm a Swiss Army knife. I can do a lot of things because I'm curious. I love to learn. I am passionate about what I do. What I do is a calling. I love to help people. And because I always want to find a better way, there's different ways you have to learn to be able to do that. And so in a very short amount of time, because I'm able to create a trusted relationship with someone and be able to actively listen and be curious and empathetic and to really meet them where they're at, to really understand, okay, where are you at today? And where is it that you wish you were? Where do you dream to be? And really practically think about what are some of those next few steps that are in your control to be able to take. Often when work leaders come to me, they're really in a scarcity mindset. They don't see the possibilities anymore because they've been so frustrated. They've been trying a lot of things and nothing feels like it's working. And so it's really about helping that leader kind of take a step back. And because of my ability to build that meaningful connection and contribute, think in a better way with trust, I'm able to help leaders be able to get from being in a frozen state to actually start moving in a way that and help them articulate that vision and how do we get alignment in the organization along with that vision. But all of that, see, I just took forever explaining that. You within 3 words, now I'm able to speak to that and people resonate immediately.
You know what's really cool about that, Mindy, and there's a lot to unpack there. So let's unpack it together.
Awesome.
As somebody with the why of contribute and a what of trust, those are the 2 whys that I look at whenever I want to build relationships. Whenever I want to work with someone who's a great relationship builder, I look for contribute and I look for trust. And you've got both of them. You also have in the middle of that one of the best whys, and that is to find a better way and share it with others. When you pair better way with those noble whys of contribute and trust, you really come at people, and you talked about it. You're able to quickly connect with people because you genuinely care. You genuinely want to help people and make a difference. And I'm sure you're able to communicate that. Then when you take that better way, and so a lot of times people with the why of better way, so when it's their number 1, they tend to come across as almost aggressive, right? Because no matter what you do, they will say, I bet there's a better way we can do it. And so you almost feel like there's nothing you can do that's good enough. But when you take contribute and then you put that in front, so you're leading with, hey, I'm here to help. I'm here to help you succeed.
Right.
And how I'm going to help you is by helping you find better ways to do things. And when I find those better ways, I'm going to share them with you so that we can build trust and we can move forward together to the next space. So you really are in a place where your superpower really helps you help others. So your superpowers are to contribute to the success of others, to find better ways, and to build trust. And you kind of have embodied all of that in the work that you've done. One of the things I love asking is, and I'd love to hear your answer to this. Can you share a success story where you were contributing to a greater cause by finding better ways and sharing them and ultimately building trust, where all 3 came together and you felt like, oh my gosh, I'm in the right place?
Yeah, that was my role at Expedia. I came in and I was working with a team that was really fractured. They're all sitting right next to each other, the 3 to 4 of them. But they're each doing, and they each had the same title, but they were doing things in a different way. And they were all kind of shut down. They were disengaged. And I came in and together as a team, we really dreamed, if we could do anything, like what would get you excited to come to work? And how would you feel like we were driving value? A lot of what they're frustrated about was that they're spending all this time working in their role and it wasn't making any impact. They didn't feel like anyone was listening. They just felt people were complaining about the work that they were doing instead. And so by shifting that narrative and as a team designing that together about how do we drive impact, what is our why, and how do we up-level the organization by creating consistency and structure in the way that we work and deliver value to our key stakeholders. I knew that by doing this, that the end goal was that we would take a centralized team and decentralize it. And that means that my role was no longer needed, but that was the better way. How we were progressing. My manager even said, Mindy, you know that you're working yourself out of a job. And I said, no worries. It's going to be fine. Because as that was coming to a transition, there is a Swiss project that was being started, in which they were setting up their first entity for Expedia in Switzerland. And I raised my hand and I said, hey, I think I might have some ideas of some better ways just for the recruiting workflow. But I in that project, I took on more and more responsibility, but that wouldn't have happened if I would have just gone into the role that I was hired to do and just tried to do the job and stay within my box. No, but because I saw how things could be different, it opened up other possibilities. And the team that I was working with, they became re-engaged. They all ended up having longer term careers at Expedia and being promoted. It was for me, looking back at that moment brings me such joy, because it was truly an alignment of when do all those come together, and you can see the power of that.
And you did something there, Mindy, that is common for Better Way people, because Better Way people love to fix things, make them better. But once they're better, then you're bored, right? It's like, okay, it's running. Where do I go next? Where can I go next and make something better? Has that been a pattern for you in your career?
100%. Yes, it has. And in organizations that really value that really have allowed you to explore and kind of be outside the periphery of your job and be seeking different ways to play and to innovate and test. And those are the jobs I do really well in. I was in a company and it took me forever to really realize, why am I frustrated here? I was doing my job. I was doing it well. I was driving key stakeholder impact. And what it came down to is they were an organization that really valued people who stayed in their box, that were super, super just in their box, and they stayed in that box. And I was doing my job, but I was also doing the periphery. I was also starting to think about how does this role become more than, or even evolve, right? Like, what happens if we automated some things and you no longer needed this role? How could this role evolve to have a greater impact in the organization? I'm always seeking, and I think that frustrates some people in the wrong organization, because they're like, it works. Why are you asking? Why are you being curious? Why are you asking why? You already launched it. But for me, it's about how, when we launch something, it doesn't become something that's just static, but we're constantly thinking about how does it continue to serve the people in the organization? Is this still working? What are those baseline measures? What is the impact that we're driving, and checking in on it, right? It's almost like a living, breathing thing. And how do we continue to improve it and think about how we can improve it? For me, nothing is static in an organization. And I've never felt that way. I've always thought about, I keep asking, and not everyone wants that.
Right. Because as a Better Way person, it can always be better. So you're always going to look to improve it. So when you're put in a situation where the culture is, hey, that's the way we've always done it, and we're going to continue to do it that way.
Right.
You probably felt so restricted. It's like you were in a box. They were trying to put you in a box, right? And you don't put Mindy in a box, right?
You don't put Mindy in a box. That's right.
You can't do that, because then she's not going to thrive. Well, tell me, this leads to my next question. Why do you think what's the power of why in the workplaces right now? What's the importance of it?
I think the power of why creates connection. I think it creates connection, first of all, with ourselves, with self-awareness. I think often we have, in moving so quick and learning all the challenges in the world. I mean, it's not easy. It's never been easy to be a human, and it's not easy now. And especially with the new technology that we're being asked to utilize in work, and how do we use that? And we're not even always in an office with everyone. Just there's layers of complexity, and the multi-generations that we have in our workforce. I think that even we as humans with our own selves have been in our heads so much that we've gotten disconnected from our core, from who are we at the core level? What is our personal why? What are our values? What are our purpose? One of the most motivating things as a human is connection and purpose. What's that sense of purpose and belonging for ourselves? And we first need to find that answer for us. So the power of why in workplaces helps us as humans to be able to kind of take a step back, and really think about that for ourselves. Then we think about, how does that align then in the workplace? What is the why then within our teams and for our leaders and our organizations? And how are we working then to accomplish that why? And is it the most effective and efficient way? And so I think it creates us that chance to pause, and we've lost that sense of pause. We've been moving so quickly, running after things, that how that impacts the individual contributor at the end is we have such disconnection in work. People want a sense of purpose and they don't even have role clarity. And that makes it really hard to be at work today.
So that's you bring up something that's really important. And as we talk about that, Simon Sinek said it but way back in 2008, when you
Yeah.
tell people what you do, you blend in with everyone else who does what you do. When you tell people why you do what you do, you connect. And that's that
Yeah.
connection. So companies that start with why, that know why they do what they do, and then their people know why they do what they do, so it becomes kind of a joint mission, because your boss or the leader of the organization may have a different why. They may not be a contributor. Right. But how is it that you are going to contribute? Because that's what you want to do. How can you
Yes.
contribute to the mission of the overall company? How can you find better ways so that we can succeed? And how
Yeah.
can you build trust? Right.
Yes. And what I just was thinking about, and I didn't think about this before, but I think the power in that too is, even we as individuals, if many of us are remote and we haven't built those deep, meaningful connections, we don't know at a deep level like we did in the past when we were working next to each other. Our level of understanding of who each of us is and who we are, we have less deeper relationships. But if we come from a mindset of why, it also helps us to give more grace to people, to help get to know them. If we enter into a conversation, instead of assuming something and emotionally reacting to maybe a statement that's been said, what would it look like to instead say, pause and say, hey, help me understand why you are coming from that thought process, or why did we land on that as the next step? Help me understand. That creates such a powerful narrative, right? It helps us get to understand more about that person and give them room to really hear and to inform versus jumping to assumption. It helps create a deeper level of understanding and conversation.
That is so good, Mindy, because one of the things we talk about at Why Not Leadership and Leading Different is really people connection.
Yeah.
Because we know that AI generation is coming. There's a lot of things that AI can do that we might not need people to do, but human connection will always be necessary. There are the getting on a Zoom call and seeing the facial expression of the person that you're talking to, seeing their reaction to the proposal that you're making, and being able to communicate. I think as AI does more, these human interactions become even more valuable, right? So as you
Yes.
said, having the grace to say, you and I are different. Dan, both Mindy and Dan lead with contribute, but Dan's how is challenge. So he's going to come at it from hey, let's do it different just to be different. And Mindy's going to say, let's do it different if it's better, Dan. We're not going to do it different just because it's different. But knowing that, right, we can communicate with each other. I also know that trust is very important for Mindy. For me, my what is make sense. So I'm all about solving problems quickly. You're not going to solve them as quick. You're going to come up with better ways to do things, but you're going to make sure that whatever we do is going to build trust. So you're going to make sure that that's involved. And again, knowing that about each other allows that interaction to happen. And like you said, take that pause. Why did, when I bring that, why does everything that I bring to Mindy, why does she always say, ooh, Dan, that's good, but let me show you how to make it better? It's not that she hates my idea. It's that that's how her brain works. So take advantage of it. And I'll give you a great example and you can share. I would love to hear one of yours. But when I worked with Gary Sanchez at Why Institute, his why is better way. Everything I brought to him, he'd say, that sounds great, Dan. Let me show you how to make it better. And I learned that whenever I was stuck on something, because I could come up with lots of ideas, I'd kind of just like do a 30% job on it and give it to him. And he'd say, ooh, let me make it better. And he'd make it so much better. And then we could together come up with a better product, right? A better idea, a better presentation, a better slideshow, a better way to communicate our message, because he could always make it better. Have you found that people come to you when they're stuck and they're saying, how do we make this, how do we tweak this just a little bit?
Yes, exactly. Like, how can I get outside? Often people say, Mindy, I need to get outside of my own head. Whenever I talk to you, I feel like I get a different viewpoint or a level of clarity or a way to move forward. Yes, I love that, right? I've had that even since I was a young person. People just like came to me to collaborate. I find that is true for myself too. Like, I love working in teams and with people, because even I get stuck trying to find a better way. Like, I know if I'm not seeing a better way, I know there's got to be a better way. But it's because if it's just me that's come up with that circle of ideas and that way forward, I want to hear other viewpoints, because I know that I have blind spots. And so I don't believe that my way is better until I've literally heard from other people and their viewpoints to really test that out, which I have found fascinating. That's one of the first things I noticed when I moved into starting my own business as a fractional worker.
So tell us one thing. This is really great, because, it's clear to me, but I'm not hiring Mindy right now. So what is it that we're going to get if we're working with Mindy, if we hire Mindy to come in and do some work with our team, and we're going to hire Agile and HR? What is it that we're going to be able to do different? What are you going to do that's different and better that we're not going to get from someone else?
Well, first of all, Dan, I think people that work with me, one of the first things is do they want things actually to be better?
Yes.
Because that really is the first check there. Okay, if we are looking, and it also needs, like, usually people are coming to me that truly have the heart to want to look at things differently, to find a better way, and also to think about it from a human-centered approach. They've realized that in the organizational capability, as they have grown their business, that they have leaned in and maybe have the process and systems down pretty well, but they're anemic on the people side. And they realize, hey, Mindy, we've got to do better here. And so it's about being able to come in and really understand that holistic workplace ecosystem, and where are they at today? Where are they trying to be? And how do we start to almost like inject nutrients into their people planning and their initiatives, and really thinking about that culture. Often they haven't even thought about, when you think about their why and the people that they've brought in, they're like, why are we all disconnected? I thought we talked about our strategy, but they haven't operationalized that. They haven't communicated that down to the individual level. They haven't really created that clarity of how are we doing this together. So Mindy comes in to really help create kind of that people roadmap of how do we reconnect the people planning and make it really strategic versus tactical. And it's really about are we co-shaping with Mindy our true overall holistic business strategy.
That's really good. And I like what you said, so that first of all, and so this is something we work on when I work with individual leaders, because your YOS kind of tells you who you want to work with. If they're looking for a better way, if they're looking to connect with their people better, if they're human centered and they're looking to get better, Mindy's going to be a great fit, because that's what you do. That's your zone of genius, right? And that's what Agile and HR is going to bring to the table. And then they're also going to focus, and if they're anemic on the people side, I love what you said there, because look, you're going to bring that side to it. You're going to bring that holistic approach that's going to connect everyone. One of the things I like to ask Mindy, and I'm going to ask you, is where do you think your why comes from? So what in your life makes you, can you pinpoint a time in your life when you said, you know what, I really want to make a difference. I really enjoy doing it. For me, I know my origin story, but what's the origin of your why? What is it that drives you to want to help others succeed?
Yeah, it comes from child Mindy. It comes from a broken family. And the people who cared to make a difference in that 5-year-old Mindy, that without them, without a community that would have surrounded my mom and my sister and I, if we wouldn't have had that, I wouldn't be where I am today. And that was community building. Those were difference makers. Those were people who went out of their way to care. And I think the 5-year-old Mindy recognized that. And I had a sense of being able to find the other people that maybe were getting missed, that weren't being heard, that were invisible. And I just had this natural innate need to want to help them realize that they are seen and that people care about them and that things are possible for them.
Wow, that is really, really good. You know, Mindy, one of the things that those of us with the why of contribute struggle with is because you're so committed to helping others. One of the things we tend to do is overcommit, say yes to too many things, and often taking care of everyone else at the expense of us. So one of the things that I've had to learn as a contributor, one of my first coach, Jamie Duragi, told me, Dan, you've got to learn to say no and say yes to the right things. So say yes to the things where you can make a big difference. How have you been able to do it in your work? Because I can imagine there's a lot of companies that can use Mindy's help, but there's only so many that can afford to bring you in. And so you can make the impact that you need to make. So how have you honed that skill to be able to say no to the wrong things and yes to the right things?
And I promise I wasn't like paid to say this, but I feel like I've gotten better since I really started talking to you, Dan. I naturally started to do that when you just said you could use this why assessment, the results, to really help like vet out the best like clients for you. Because that's true. At first, when I started Agile in HR, I was just taking any client. But I realized that not every client was the best fit for me. So I started to meet other fractional leaders and create a trusted community of people that I really value their expertise, so that when I do talk with someone and I have my first calls called a discovery session, and I may not be the answer. I even say I may not be the person, your person, but let's find you the person that's going to be the best match for you. And so that's how I've seen that at work.
That's really, really good. And we'll take the endorsement, Mindy. Well, of course we will. And but that's what it's about. That's the reason I love doing this work. And that's the reason I enjoy working with leaders, because I truly believe leaders who are self-aware are better leaders. When you
100%.
know who you are, when you understand what drives you, Mindy, when you know that you're driven to contribute, you're driven to find better ways, and you're driven to build trust, you're going to build a team around yourself with those things that you don't have, and you're going to make sure that they know how to talk to you and you know how to talk to them based on their why operating system. So thank you for that. I really love hearing that. And you're right. We did not pay Mindy to say that. So thank you for the kudos on that, because we really do take a lot of pride in helping people understand themselves. And I love that had an impact on you. Let's talk about something fun. Let's talk about your why not moment. One of the questions I love to ask is, tell us about a time in your life when you said why not to an opportunity, something that came up in your life, and instead of saying no or let me think about it, you said why not, let's do it, and you're so glad that you did. Tell us about that story.
I think it was when I was going to school to be a social worker, and I was starting to. My husband was like, Mindy, like in social work, it's you're trying to find a better way, but there's so many limitations when you, as a social worker. Like I was seeing other people that were volunteering, having a greater impact with the people that I was trying to serve. It was way too many. The caseload was so big, and there just was so many restrictions. And my husband's like, Mindy, you're frustrated. And he's like, why? He's like, you're going to graduate, but because I got married when I was in college. But he was like, Mindy, it's like, it's okay not to have a job after you graduate. And I said, oh my goodness, you're right. Why not? Why not go find somewhere that I'm going to be able to take my skill set and have joy and not be frustrated? I don't have to have a job. That is not the definition of success. So I said, why not? And I found social work in workplaces and how that puzzle piece like fit in. And that skill set equipped me so well to have a different perspective and be successful in helping rethink how we work to create healthier workplaces.
So when you talk about that, when you talk about the work that you're doing with being able to bring social work into HR, right? And bringing people connection. I think what I hear a lot is people connection in the work that you do. And that's a great why not moment. And so you were married young, and that's a great why not also, right? I'm sure it was, right? You're
still married, almost 26 years.
Fantastic. Congratulations. My wife and I just celebrated our 30th. So you guys are right on our heels.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that is fantastic. So you married young, and then you didn't go to work in social work right away. You decided to go to create something better, right? And bring it in a way that you could contribute to others. So Mindy, last question. How about, one of the other things that we talk about in the why of better way is sometimes these people, what we find, are not great creators. They're great at improving things. Yeah. So, give Mindy a blank sheet of paper and she might just stare at it. But if we just write a scribble on it, she'll show you how to make that scribble better. Is that a challenge or a strength that you have, being able to take things that other people create and then applying them in different industries or finding a better way to use them?
Yes. And I enjoy having something to start out with. A blank sheet of paper is kind of, it freezes me. I'm like, how do I make a blank sheet of paper better? So, with AI and ChatGPT, that really helps give me something to feedback on. I love the feedback. At least it gives you a starting point, right? It creates a place, that scribble to get started from if there is no input. Because sometimes people don't have input, right? They don't know where to start. I think a lot of leaders are so frozen right now in a scarcity mindset that they truly, and they're coming from a very emotional place, and there isn't that scribble on the page. And so sometimes they are looking to me to really help what's next. And that for me can sometimes be a little bit challenging when you're coming from a blank slate.
I can imagine that you're great. One of the things Rosie Ward talked about it. We were back and forth on, I think it was on LinkedIn. She posted about crappy first drafts. You just give me a first draft. Give me something different, because you can't improve on zero. You can improve on anything, right? As long as you've got something, put an outline together and hand it to Mindy. Mindy can improve it. But if you've got nothing, it's really hard to get started. So you just go out and try it, right? Give that first talk. Have that first presentation, make that first introduction. Might not be great, but you're going to learn from it. That's where we're going to, and Mindy's going to help you, because she's going to say, okay, this is what we did. This is how we can do it better. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does make sense. And so sometimes that first step with those leaders that are kind of the blank slate, the first thing is like, what can we control? Because we need to get some signal. And so let's think about what that one next thing is and go do that and see what is the outcomes of that, and then working. Then we have so much more information to work from.
That's so true. So Mindy, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, what is the best way to get a hold of you and work with you?
Yeah. So people can connect with me on LinkedIn, or they can go to my website, agileandhr.com.
That is fantastic. Mindy, this has been so much fun. I really enjoyed unpacking your YOS, learning more about Agile and HR, your background and your history, and sharing that with our Why Not leaders. What do you say we end the show on that note?
I would love to. Why not?
All right. Thank you so much, Mindy. Right on cue. We will see you all next week on our next podcast of Why Not Leadership's Lead Different podcast. Have a great week, and we'll see you all next week.
This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different, because great leaders change the world.